parents took a second mortgage for my sister, and now they want to hijack my wedding for her. I have no idea how to start this, but let's just say life has been doing the absolute most lately, and I need to unload before I lose my mind. My wedding is scheduled for April, and it's something my fiancé and I have been planning for over a year. He's 25, and he's been dreaming of a spring wedding since he was a kid. You know, the whole flowers blooming, perfect weather vibe. I think it's a great idea too. It feels fresh and full of hope, kind of like starting a new chapter in life. I've been looking forward to it, or at least I was until last week. So for a little context, I'm 27, and I have an older sister who's 30. Growing up, we were pretty different. She's the classic golden child type. You know, the one who can do no wrong in your parents' eyes? Yeah. That's her. I mean, I don't think they ever flat out said it, but it was always clear she was their favorite. If she got into trouble, she's just figuring things out. If I messed up, oh boy. It was the end of the world. That dynamic never really changed even as we got older. When it came time for college, my parents really showed how deep their favoritism went. They took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for my sister's tuition. It was a big deal, and they struggled with the payments for years. By the time I was ready for college, there wasn't anything left for me. I had to figure it out on my own. Scholarships, part-time jobs, the whole grind. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud of how I handled it. But there was definitely some resentment simmering beneath the surface. Fast forward to now, and I've managed to land a pretty decent job. It pays well enough that I started helping my parents out financially. They're still paying off that second mortgage. So for the past couple of years, I've been sending them $650 a month to lighten their load. It wasn't something they asked for. I just felt like I could, so I should. But here's the thing. Despite all that, it still feels like they don't really see me. My sister is still the star of the show, even though she hasn't exactly done much since college. Let's talk about my sister for a second. She's been dating this guy for about 3 years now, and from what I've heard, things aren't great. He's been dropping hints. And by hints, I mean practically neon signs that he wants her to propose, but she's been dragging her feet. Honestly, I don't think she's ready for marriage, but that's not really my business. I've stayed out of it because, well, who wants to get involved in someone else's relationship drama? That was until last Saturday when I got a call from my mom. It was around lunchtime, and I was just chilling at home with my fiancé, going over some final details for the wedding. You know, little things like table arrangements and flower choices. My mom called and said, "Hey, can you come over? We need to talk." Her tone was serious, like something big was going on. Naturally, I asked what it was about, but all she said was, "You'll understand when you get here." I'm not going to lie. I was a little annoyed. First of all, we were in the middle of wedding planning. Second, I hate when people do the whole "we need to talk" thing without telling you what it's about directly. It's like they want you to stress about it on the way there. My fiancé could tell I was irritated and asked if I wanted to just ignore it and keep working on the wedding stuff. I thought about it, but I had to find out what was so serious it couldn't be said over the phone. I told my fiancé I'd head over and try to make it quick. How bad could it be? I said. He rolled his eyes, but didn't argue. Looking back, I probably should have stayed home. So I showed up at my parents' house, and it was like walking into some kind of intervention. My sister was sitting on the couch with this smug look, and my parents were perched across from her like they'd rehearsed some big speech. The vibe was way too formal for a casual family chat, and immediately, I felt on edge. I sat down, and my mom launched into her pitch. She started with how family is so important, and how big moments are best shared with loved ones. Then, she dropped the bomb. My sister had this amazing idea to propose to her boyfriend during my wedding reception. She actually said it would be so romantic, and the perfect time since all the family would already be there. My sister, of course, was grinning ear to ear, like this was the most genius plan anyone had ever come up with. I didn't even let her finish. I cut her off mid-sentence with a flat, "Absolutely not. I mean, who even thinks like this? It's my wedding. The day my fiancé and I have been planning for over a year. How was it okay to just hijack that for her relationship drama?" I expected some pushback, but I didn't expect them to double down the way they did. My dad jumped in with his classic family should support each other speech, acting like I was being unreasonable for saying no. Then my sister decided to chime in, calling me selfish and accusing me of ruining her big moment. Her big moment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her point blank why she couldn't plan her own proposal instead of piggybacking off my wedding. She shrugged and said it was the perfect opportunity because all the family would already be there, and it would be less work for her. I could feel my blood boiling. I tried to stay calm at first, but they just kept pushing. My mom said I was overreacting, and that a proposal wouldn't take away from the wedding. She even had the audacity to suggest that it would make the day more memorable. My dad nodded along, like this was the most logical thing in the world. And my sister just sat there looking so smug, like she thought she'd already won. That's when I lost it. I told them loud and clear that if they even thought about going through with this, they'd all be uninvited from the wedding. And I didn't stop there. I reminded them about the $650 I send them every month to help with their mortgage, the same mortgage they took out to put my sister through college. I told them if they couldn't respect me and my fiancé on our day, that money would stop immediately. The room went dead silent after that. My mom looked like she was about to cry, and my dad just stared at me like I'd slapped him. My sister, though, she didn't back down. She started yelling about how I was being unfair and how I was holding the family hostage with money. She said I was punishing them just because she wanted to do something special for her boyfriend. I told her that if her idea of special was crashing someone else's wedding, maybe she wasn't ready to get married in the first place. At that point, I'd had enough. I stood up and told them I wasn't going to argue about it anymore. I said, "This is my final word. If you try to pull this, you're out. No wedding, no money, no nothing." Then I walked out of the house without looking back. Now I honestly have no idea where this is heading. Am I being too harsh here? I get that family dynamics can be messy, but this just feels like a massive overstep. I don't think it's unreasonable to want my wedding to actually be about, my wedding. But maybe I'm missing something? Am I the a-hole for putting my foot down and drawing that line? Let me know what you think because I'm honestly at a loss right now. Update 1. Hey guys. I thought of giving you an update on everything that happened after that meeting at my parents' house. Things have gone from bad to worse. And, honestly, I'm starting to wonder how I even got stuck in this ridiculous situation in the first place. So I forgot to tell you in the last post that after I walked out of my parents' house, I was livid. And when I got back, my fiancé immediately knew something was up. I gave him the rundown of everything they said, including my sister's genius plan and how my parents were fully backing her. He was just as mad as I was. Actually, no. He might have been even angrier. He kept saying, "How dare they try to ruin our day like this?" He was ready to uninvite my sister right then and there. I told him I wanted to give them one last chance to drop this nonsense, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. "They've already shown you who they are," he said. "What makes you think they'll back down now?" And he wasn't wrong. The next day, I got a call from my mom. She said she wanted to talk things through, but it was obvious she just wanted me to change my mind. She kept saying things like, "It's just one moment, and it won't take away from the wedding." I told her for the millionth time that my answer was no. She tried guilt-tripping me, saying that my sister was heartbroken and that I was tearing the family apart over something small. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, if this is so small, then why can't she just propose on a different day? She didn't have an answer for that. Later that evening, my sister showed up at my house. She didn't even bother texting or calling first. She just showed up and started pounding on my door. When I opened it, she immediately launched into a rant about how I'd ruined her plans and humiliated her in front of our parents. She was shouting so loud, I'm pretty sure the neighbors could hear. She kept going on about how her boyfriend was getting impatient and how this was her last chance to propose before he left her. I told her straight up, "That's your problem, not mine. If he's going to leave you over this, maybe your relationship has bigger issues than you think." That shut her up for a second, but then she started yelling again, saying I was selfish and jealous, and didn't want her to be happy. At that point, I told her to leave before I called someone to make her leave. After she stormed off, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would calm down. Nope. The very next day, I got a call from my grandma. She's the only grandparent we have left, and she's always been the family's peacekeeper. She started off by saying she'd heard about the situation and wanted to help mediate. Of course, that just meant my sister had gone crying to her with her side of the story. She said she was disappointed in how I was handling things, and that families should stick together, especially during big moments like weddings. I could tell right away that my sister had twisted the story to make herself look like the victim. So I calmly explained everything to her. How my sister wanted to propose at my wedding, how my parents were fully backing her, and how I told them no. You'd think that would have been enough. Right? Hell no. She started saying things like, "It's just a proposal, and it won't take away from your wedding if it's done tastefully." I told her, "Grandma, it's my wedding, not hers. Why is this so hard for everyone to understand?" She tried to push the family comes first angle, but I wasn't having it. I said, if family comes first, then why isn't anyone respecting me and my fiancé on our day? The conversation got heated after that. She kept defending my sister, saying she was in a tough spot and just wanted to make her proposal special. I reminded her that she's 30 years old and fully capable of planning her own proposal without hijacking someone else's event. She didn't like that answer. Things escalated, and before I knew it, she was crying and saying I was being cruel to my family. I felt bad for making her upset, but at the same time, I wasn't going to back down. I told her, if supporting family means letting people walk all over me, then maybe I don't need that kind of support. After I hung up, I was completely drained. This whole situation was turning into way more drama than I ever expected. My fiancé, as usual, was my rock. He was fired up saying, "This is beyond disrespectful. They're completely out of line." I told him I agreed and that we needed to stand firm on our boundaries. He wasn't happy with how things had escalated, but he knew we couldn't let this slide. The next few days were weirdly quiet. No calls, no texts, nothing. It felt like the calm before the storm. I started wondering if maybe they'd finally gotten the message. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. My family isn't exactly known for letting things go. And sure enough, my mom called again a few days later. This time, she tried a different tactic. Instead of guilt-tripping me, she tried to appeal to my sense of fairness. She said, "We've talked to your sister, and she's willing to compromise. She won't do it during the ceremony, just at the reception. Isn't that reasonable?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, "No. It's not reasonable. The answer is still no." End of discussion. She sighed and said, "I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this." At that point, I was done. I told her, "If you bring this up again, you're uninvited. I mean it." Then I hung up. Now we're at a bit of a standoff. My parents haven't called since that last conversation, and my sister hasn't shown up again, thankfully. My fiancé and I are moving forward with our wedding plans, but there's still this cloud hanging over everything. Part of me hopes they'll come to their senses, but, honestly, I'm not holding my breath. That's where things stand for now. I'll update you if anything changes, but for now, I'm just trying to focus on the wedding and not let this mess ruin what should be one of the happiest days of my life. Thanks for sticking with me through this. It helps to know I'm not alone in thinking this whole situation is insane. Update 2. Hey everyone. Back with another update because, surprise, things have shifted again, but not in a great way. With the wedding right around the corner, you'd think the drama would start settling down. Yeah. Not even close. Also, a few of you mentioned it seems like my fiancé has hated my parents from the start, so let me address that first before diving into the latest chaos. Okay. So about the comment saying my fiancé seems to hate my parents, honestly, that's not the case. He's always been respectful and has made an effort to build a good relationship with them. But over the years, he's seen firsthand how I've been treated, and he's fiercely protective of me. It's not that he hates them. It's more that he's frustrated by how one-sided things can feel. He's been incredibly patient, but when they cross lines like this, it's hard for him to just stay quiet. And honestly, I can't blame him. Now let's address the elephant in the room. After the last round of nonsense with my sister, my mom, then my grandma, there was a bit of a standoff. Nobody called me, and I didn't reach out to them either. Honestly, it was a relief to have some silence. My fiancé and I focused on finalizing wedding details. Table arrangements, cake tastings, seating charts, all that fun stuff. But even with all that, the tension was still in the air. I kept wondering when the next shoe would drop. Well, a few days ago, my mom finally reached out. She started the conversation by saying she didn't want to argue anymore and just wanted to move forward as a family. I was skeptical, but I let her talk. She said my sister had agreed to drop the whole idea of proposing at the wedding. She went on about how she realized it was disrespectful and how she wanted to make things right. I wasn't convinced. It felt too easy, especially after how stubborn they'd all been about this. Still, I told her, if she's really dropping it, then fine. But I'm not taking her word for it. I need to hear it from her directly. She said she'd talk to her and have her call me. I didn't exactly hold my breath, but I figured I'd give them the benefit of the doubt for now. Later that evening, my sister called me. She started with a half-hearted apology, saying she was sorry for causing stress, and that she didn't realize how important it was to me and my fiancé to keep the wedding focused on us. She said she decided to wait and propose at a different time. Her tone didn't sound genuine, but at least she was saying the right words. I told her, if you're serious about this, then I'm willing to move past it. But if you even think about pulling something at the wedding, I'm not afraid to kick you out. She told me to calm down and affirmed that her boyfriend is already going cold for her, and that she started to doubt the whole idea of committing herself with him. For the first time, she went back talking to me and joking just like a sister, then promised not to ruin anything. After that call, I told my fiancé what happened. He was cautiously optimistic, but he made it clear he still didn't trust her. I'll believe it when I see it, he said. Honestly, I felt the same way, but at least it seemed like the drama might finally be settling down. With that out of the way, we threw ourselves into wedding prep. The big day is only a couple of weeks away, and there is still so much to do. We finalized the menu, went over the timeline with our wedding planner, and confirmed all the vendors. It felt good to focus on the exciting parts again instead of constantly dealing with family drama. But, of course, it wasn't long before things took another turn. A few days after the call with my sister, my dad texted me. He said he wanted to make sure everything was okay and asked if we could meet up to talk. I agreed, thinking maybe he just wanted to smooth things over before the wedding. When we met, he seemed off. He kept circling around the topic of my sister without actually saying much. Eventually, he admitted he was worried my sister might still try something at the wedding. I wasn't surprised. I told him, if she does, she's getting kicked out, period. My dad started talking about how things can get emotional at weddings and how I should try to be understanding if my sister got caught up in the moment. I stopped him right there. I said, if you're telling me to let her get away with something, then we have a problem. I'm not letting anyone ruin this day for me or my fiancé. He backed off after that, but the whole conversation left a bad taste in my mouth. It felt like he was trying to test how far I'd let things go. When I got home, I told my fiancé about the conversation, and he was furious. He said, this is exactly why I don't trust them. They're still trying to cover for her. At this point, we decided to come up with a backup plan. We talked to our wedding planner and asked her to brief the staff at the venue. We didn't go into all the messy details, but we made it clear that if anyone tried to hijack the event, they were to be escorted out immediately. It felt a little extreme, but honestly, I didn't want to take any chances. Now our wedding is in just 2 days, and the mood is a strange mix of excitement and underlying anxiety. My fiancé and I are trying to stay focused on the final touches, double-checking RSVPs, finalizing the seating chart, and making sure everything is good to go, but there's this persistent worry sitting in the back of my mind. What if my sister hasn't actually backed down? What if my parents are still quietly encouraging her? I'm trying to brush it off and stay positive, but it's hard not to think about it. Tomorrow is the rehearsal dinner, and while I'm hopeful everyone will behave, there's still that nagging doubt. My sister hasn't said or done anything suspicious lately, and my parents have been quiet since that last conversation. On the surface, it feels like things are fine. But with my family, you never really know. I keep telling myself, just 2 more days. If I can get through this, everything will be fine. We're doing everything we can to make sure the day goes smoothly. The wedding planner is prepped, the venue staff knows what to watch out for, and we've made it clear that no nonsense will be tolerated. My fiancé is fully ready to throw people out if needed, and honestly, so am I. I'm holding on to cautious optimism, but if this whole situation has taught me anything, it's that with my family, nothing is ever as straightforward as it seems. Fingers crossed that this truce is legit and not just another setup for more drama. I'll let you guys know how it went after the big day. Update 3. Hey guys. It's time for the update I know you've been waiting for. The wedding day has come and gone, and let me tell you, unfortunately, it was every bit as chaotic as I feared. We got through it, but not without some drama. Okay. So the day started off perfectly. The weather was gorgeous. My fiancé looked stunning, and everything at the venue was running smoothly. We had a quiet morning getting ready, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could actually breathe. My parents showed up on time, looking happy and surprisingly normal. Even my sister showed up without any smug attitude or weird energy, which I'll admit caught me off guard. For a second, I thought, maybe they really did drop the whole proposal thing. The ceremony went off without a hitch. My fiancé walked down the aisle, and I could barely hold it together. It was perfect. Exactly what we had dreamed of. The vows, the idas, everything felt like a fairy tale. We walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, and I was thinking, okay. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they actually respected our wishes. But deep down, I knew it was too good to be true. The reception started, and the energy was amazing. People were laughing, dancing, and having a great time. My fiancé and I were busy bouncing between tables, thanking everyone for coming. That's when I noticed my sister. She was hovering near the DJ booth, talking to my dad, and looking way too serious for someone who was supposed to be enjoying herself. My gut told me something was up, but I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt. Big mistake. Fast forward to the speeches. My dad went first, saying all the usual nice things about marriage and family. Then it was my sister's turn. I was already on the edge because I didn't even want her to have a speech, but my mom insisted, saying it was important for her to be part of the day. She started off normal enough, talking about how happy she was for me and my fiancé, sharing a few funny childhood stories, but then out of nowhere, she started getting emotional and mentioned her boyfriend. The whole room got quiet. I could feel my fiancé's hand tighten around mine as my sister started talking about how much she loved her boyfriend and how being there that day had inspired her to take the next step. My heart raced, and before I could do anything, she turned to her boyfriend, pulled out a ring, and got down on one knee. The room went dead silent for a moment, and then there was scattered applause. Her boyfriend looked completely stunned and not in a good way. My fiancé let go of my hand, stood up, and said, "Are you kidding me?" I didn't even think my body just moved. I got up, walked straight to my sister, and told her, "You need to leave now." She tried to argue, saying it was just a small proposal and didn't take away from the wedding. I wasn't having it. I signaled to the venue staff who were prepped for this exact scenario, and they came over to escort her out. That's when things really blew up. My dad got involved, yelling at me to let it go and not ruin the day. My sister shouted about how I was being selfish. And her boyfriend, he looked like he wanted to disappear. By now, the whole reception was watching this unfold. The staff managed to get my sister outside, but she was still yelling. My dad followed, and I couldn't help myself. I went after them. Outside the venue, it was chaos. My sister was ranting about how I had embarrassed her in front of everyone, and my dad was trying to mediate, saying we should talk it out. I told them both, "There's nothing to talk about. You disrespected me and my husband, and you're done here." That's when my sister lost it. She stepped toward me like she was going to punch me, but the venue staff stepped in and held her back. My dad started yelling at the staff, saying they were overreacting and that we were family, but they weren't having it. They told him, "Sir, you need to leave, or we'll call the police." At this point, my sister's boyfriend finally spoke up. He said, "I didn't even want this. You've made a fool of yourself." Then he stormed off, leaving my sister standing there like an idiot. Eventually, the staff managed to get both my sister and dad off the property. My mom came out crying and started begging me to let them back in. I told her, "If you don't go back inside and behave yourself, you're next." He looked at me like I had slapped him, but he went back inside without another word. When I walked back into the reception, the mood was tense. People were whispering, and I could feel all the eyes on me. My husband looked furious at the whole situation. He came over, hugged me, and said, "Let's move on, this is our day." And that's exactly what we did. We took a moment to regroup, and then we got back out there. We danced, cut the cake, and tried to salvage what was left of the night. By the end, most people were back to having a good time, but there was no denying the shadow my sister's stunt cast over everything. When the reception finally wound down, my husband and I collapsed into the car, exhausted. He looked at me and said, "Well, at least we handled it." We laughed because, honestly, what else could we do? It wasn't the perfect day we imagined, but we were married, and that's what mattered. However, the day after the wedding was a whirlwind of phone calls and whispers from the extended family. Apparently, word of what went down spread like wildfire, and suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Some were calling to check in, but couldn't help slipping in little jabs or fishing for details about the drama. Others flat out scolded me for causing tension as if my sister's stunt wasn't the root of the issue. My aunt even said something like, "You know how she is. You should have just let it go for the sake of peace." Meanwhile, the family group chat became a passive-aggressive battlefield of cryptic messages and pointed likes on certain comments. It was exhausting, to say the least. And, yeah, that's it for now. But I'll update you guys on how I'll handle things from now on with my family after my trust with them is shattered, but that when I have more time to process everything. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. Take care. Update 4. Hey guys. I'm back with what I think might be the final update. And let me tell you, if you thought the wedding day was chaotic, the aftermath has been an absolute mess. It's been 3 weeks after the wedding, and my family has gone completely off the rails. So after the reception, my husband and I took a couple of days to decompress. We stayed off our phones, ignored messages, and just tried to focus on enjoying the fact that we were finally married. It was nice while it lasted, but the silence didn't last long. By the time we checked our phones, there were about a dozen missed calls and texts from my mom, my dad, and, of course, my sister. The messages ranged from guilt trips to outright rage. My mom's texts were all about how I had embarrassed the family and how I humiliated my sister by having her kicked out in front of everyone. My dad's texts were more neutral, like he was trying to play the peacemaker, but he was still leaning toward defending my sister. And my sister? Well, her messages were just straight up angry. She called me selfish, said I ruined her life, and even accused me of turning her boyfriend against her. Speaking of her boyfriend, he broke up with her. Apparently, the whole wedding stunt was the last straw for him. One of my cousins, who's close to him, told me he was furious that she ignored his feelings and made the proposal all about her. He even said he felt secondhand embarrassment watching her get dragged out by security. Honestly, I don't blame him. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably have done the same thing. Anyway, back to the family drama. After ignoring the calls for a bit longer, I finally decided to answer my mom. The moment I picked up, she started crying, saying things like, "How could you treat your sister like that? She's devastated and broken. And don't you care about this family?" I stayed calm and told her that my sister brought this on herself and that I warned her a million times. She didn't want to hear it. She kept insisting that I should have just let it go because it was just a proposal, and it wouldn't have hurt anything. I told her, "Mom, she disrespected me and my husband on the most important day of our lives. If you think I'm the bad guy for standing up for myself, then that's your problem, not mine." That didn't go over well. She started yelling about how I'm tearing the family apart, and I just hung up. I wasn't in the mood to argue anymore. Then my dad decided to show up at our house unannounced. My husband and I were just starting to feel like things were calming down when I heard a knock at the door. It was him standing there with this stern look on his face. He said he wanted to talk things out, but it quickly turned into another lecture about how I should have handled things differently. He kept saying, "You didn't have to escalate it like that, and family is supposed to forgive each other." I told him, "Dad, I didn't escalate anything. I told her not to do it, and she did it anyway. What was I supposed to do? Let her walk all over me?" He didn't have an answer for that, but he still tried to guilt-trip me. At one point, he even said, "You know your sister doesn't have anyone else. You're her role model." That one made me laugh because, honestly, if I'm her role model, she's doing a terrible job of following my example. The real chaos, though, happened a couple of days later. My husband and I decided to grab dinner at a local restaurant, thinking we'd finally get a break from all the drama, but guess who showed up? My sister. I have no idea how she knew we'd be there, but she came storming in like a woman on a mission. She walked straight up to our table and started yelling about how I ruined her life. People in the restaurant were staring, and my husband looked like he was ready to throw his drink at her. I told her, "You need to leave before you embarrass yourself even more." That just made her angrier. She started ranting about how her boyfriend dumped her and how it was all my fault. She said, "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone. You destroyed my relationship." I told her, "You did that to yourself. Maybe if you respected other people's boundaries, you wouldn't be in this mess." At this point, a manager came over and asked her to leave. My sister refused, saying she had a right to confront me. The manager threatened to call the cops, and that's when things got physical. My sister tried to shove past the manager to get to me, but a couple of people nearby stepped in and restrained her. It was a whole scene. People were yelling. My husband was furious, and my sister was dragged out of the restaurant kicking and screaming. After that, my husband and I decided to leave too. We didn't even finish our food. On the way home, he said, "I think it's time to cut ties." And honestly, I agree. This whole situation has shown me just how toxic my family can be, and I don't think I can keep putting myself or my husband through this. Since then, I've gone no contact with my sister and low contact with my parents. As for my sister, I heard through the grapevine that she's been telling everyone who will listen that I'm the reason her life is falling apart. She's blaming me for her breakup, her embarrassment, and everything else that's gone wrong for her. It's frustrating, but at this point, I'm done caring. I've spent too much time and energy dealing with her nonsense, and I'm ready to move on. My husband and I are focusing on building our life together and leaving the drama behind. It's not easy, but it feels like the right decision. I've learned that sometimes you have to put yourself and your happiness first, even if it means walking away from people who refuse to respect you. That's it for now. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Your advice and support have meant a lot, and it's helped me see things more clearly. Here's to hoping for a drama-free future.